Behind me is a tract that Nature Conservancy purchased last summer, and it consists of 240 acres. And as you can tell behind me, this is a former crop field, and in these tree belts there's tremendous piles of rock, and they left large trees in the rock piles, or the trees come up in the rock piles. And from the trees, you can see the encroachment onto the prairie, the CRP field, and that's coming from behind me. And this first 50 or 60 feet is what we cut by hand for our management objectives, is to essentially eliminate all the trees. We've got contractors coming out, and they're going to take care of the large trees mechanically and pile, and then we'll burn them. And with all the smaller trees, because we know fire alone won't kill Siberian elm, it'll top kill them but not permanently kill them. We burned it this spring, a couple weeks ago, and you can see everything's still staying pretty brown. And then later this summer, we're going to helicopter spray it to give it kind of a 1-2 punch. And the helicopter also allows us to ensure a good coverage. And essentially, we know we're not going to solve the problem, but we're hoping to reset the problem, and then we can use fire to kill all the smaller trees that come up next year. There is a tremendous amount of seed source. To the south of this tract is more Nature Conservancy property, and these trees are seeding out into a half a mile, 3/4 mile from the ends of these belts. So there's a huge seed source here. And once these tree belts and these trees are addressed, essentially we'll have almost 4 miles of open prairie out here, which is almost unheard of on the uplands in Minnesota. For the management standpoint, the no trees allows for more open, better habitat for grassland birds, and it really preserves this open prairie landscape look that we've been striving for years. The main objective for this one is just to get rid of all the trees. It's a low diversity CRP planting, so by us using helicopter spraying, using a helicopter, we achieve one, that we can be more precise as to where we're spraying. There's lots of crop fields around us. Drift is a real big concern out here. And by being more precise, we can save money on chemicals, and we can really hit our target areas and know what we're doing. And the helicopter also allows us to ensure a good coverage. It's a lot smoother process with a helicopter. Chemicals aren't going to solve it. It's a fire chemical punch, and I think we can make headway on it. But it's going to take multiple years of fire just because the seed source is so huge. These trees have been standing for 20 some years. Years ago, the DNR worked with the landowner to feather the trees back. They only went back so far because the landowner desires, and now we've got the remnants since the Conservancy purchased it, and we're just going to clean them all up. There still is some forbs, just not the real high quality native forbs we're looking for. So anything that's out here is essentially few and far between and sacrificial to the benefit of the bigger goal of getting rid of all the trees. We're assuming that the trees are the bigger problem with the grassland birds, that they need that open structure. Once we get rid of the trees, it's going to open things up for the grassland birds, and that's what the goal here is. The #1 goal for this tract right now is first to get rid of all the trees. So far, the fire went really well. Worked with the DNR this spring, and because it was a warm season planting, this is CRP that hadn't been messed with in over 15 years probably. It burned extremely hot. It burned really well. We had to worry about town being a couple miles to the north here. Our biggest concern here wasn't holding. Our biggest concern was smoke management. Everything went off as planned. We had really tough weather this spring, so we pulled the trigger when we could. And you can look behind me and see that the trees are essentially top killed. But from past experience, we know that they're going to green back up later this summer and they'll come back. So the fire and then the chemical 1-2 punch is what we're going to try to do, to hit the reset button, and then we can start back. It's just important to note that as you look behind you, you see this is a couple 100 yards off the trees, but it's actually, the seeds go up to half a mile, 3/4 mile. So it's a huge tree encroachment. The bigger picture here is, in the long term, is because we're getting rid of the trees, it leaves options for us to do about whatever we want. And we haven't worked out the details on that because the trees are still here. So whether it's a grazing, haying, burning, rest, this is kind of an experimental place where we can use a combination of all four at any given time to really see what we can do here.